Hi, I'm Nelson Ford from the Gunsmith in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm going to cover what may seem obscure to some people, but I'm a Peacemaker guy. My dad enjoyed fast draw. Um, he had Colt Peacemakers, and so I'd like to again, like I always do, thank people for loaning me guns. You're probably, I shouldn't say you're all aware, there was first generation Colts from 1873 to World War II, and they made 350 plus thousand of them, and 150,000 were in 45 Colt, great caliber. But they also made guns to pair with Winchester rifles, 4440, 3840, and 3220. Those four calibers made up almost the entire run of the guns. The 45 Colt was 150,000. The 4440 was 60,000. The 3840 was 40,000, and I think it was like 39 and change or whatever. And the 3220 was almost 30,000, and that made up the bulk of them. And then there was other, there was 30 different calibers they were made in, and there's a chart in Wilson's book that you should look at, and it makes it for a great collecting scheme. You can look at all the different calibers and how many were made. The one caliber, the 380 Ely, they made one of, and so that's not going to be one you're probably going to be able to get a hold of. But they made them in 4440 shot shell for like Annie Oakley, with smooth bores. They made just 25 or 30 different calibers. Anyway, after the war, these cowboy calibers that went with these old Winchester rifles, the 92, and the Marlin 94, and all these different guns, they were made in those cowboy calibers. Today, if you buy the new Marlin or the new Winchesters, they're made in 357. They make the 1873 and 357. Those calibers, those guns were never made in those calibers originally. And so they modernized them. So after the war, all these guns, 350,000 of these single actions that had been eclipsed by the double action police guns of the early 1900s, they were meat just sitting out there with nothing to do in strange calibers. And so Christie Gun Company was grabbing these guns and offering 38 special and 22 caliber conversions, barrels and cylinders alike. And then they would throw these sleeves into the cylinders. I should have had the cylinder out of here. And you can see the sleeves. We'll get you a close-up of that. And then they had to do this work with the firing pin to get it to work with the rimfire. It's going to hit in a different place. Manufacturers that made them in the 50s, Great Western. This is a Great Western right here. They always had these plum-colored frames. They made them in 22s without sleeves, 22 barrel, 22 cylinder, and guys could go out and buy them and enjoy them and plink in their backyards or wherever they were shooting and have a great time with them. Great Western, by the way, made the 357 Atomic. I think they had to call it the Atomic because the 357 Magnum may have already been trademarked at the time. And then Haas, I believe, came out in the 60s with their own version. And there was a three-letter digit guy that made these things, EWC or somebody, made Single Actions. And they also made a 22 caliber conversion. And you can see they all had their different ways of doing it. These guys have put firing pins into the wall, and the hammers come down, and the firing pin's not on the hammer. On the this Christie, this conversion has the firing pin on the hammer. And so Christie also did some really crazy stuff. They took they did 38s and 22s on these older guns. I think this is an 1898, a black powder frame. One of them is. One of them doesn't have the push pins. Nope, they're both push pins, 1899. They would put these king sights on them. and King Sight would sell them these sights, and then Christie would put the barrels and cylinders in them. And this was a presentation pair. They put the nice sights on them, and they put ivory grips on them, and they jeweled the hammers on both guns. They called it, there's another name for it, damisel, but it's jeweling, and they did a beautiful job. The 22 used the sleeves. These are Christie guns. This is a Christie barrel on the 22. It's marked. A lot of times they put the Christie mark underneath the ejector rod housing. But this one didn't line up right, and I had to do some work to get this gun to work right. But those are Christie conversions. This right here is a Colt. It numbers from 1899. Colt made 107 Peacemakers, and then they made 97 or 98 of the target models. This gun doesn't letter because it came through at a time when there was a large contract. Colt made 44 rimfires and 22 rimfires, and along about 1888, the word was handed down to get all the rimfire frames out of there. And they have a different firing pin, and it looks entirely different. And the frame is cut differently for the rimfires. And so they gave the orders to get rid of all the rimfire frames, get them out of here. We're not going to do them anymore. The rimfire was on the Henry. So the 44 rimfire was around the Henry ammunition. If you have a Henry cartridge today, it's probably $40 for one cartridge, or hundreds of dollars, or maybe thousands of dollars for a box. The 22 still existed. Back then they called it the 22 rimfire instead of the 22 long rifle. But by 1890, all of the frames were gone. And when they tried to get them numbered in the numbering shop and put the paperwork through, these big government contracts that had tens of thousands of guns being done, they didn't have time to change paperwork. So this gun letters as a, not an artillery, a cavalry. It letters that as just a 7.5 inch 45 Colt, which is unfortunate. It would be nice if it lettered as a 22. But that's an extreme example. Has correct grips on it. Gun is in perfect shape. But those are, these guns are romantic to me, and a lot of existential people don't understand how somebody gets off on this stuff. I guess I nerd out on it. It's just, there's just more to know and more cool stuff to have and do. And you get bored after a while with the same old stuff all the time. And I run a dozen or sometimes 2 dozen guns through the shop a week. I can't look at the same stuff all the time. I need something different. And these are it. And if you can find a Christie, you can find them in nice condition, or a Great Western, you can have a 22 full size. These are full size guns, not to be confused with the reduced size 1956 Colt Scout. And then they also made one with the adjustable sight, the Colt Frontier 22. And they had a small cylinder, small frame. A lot of them had aluminum frames. Some of them had nice iron case-hardened frames. But they're not to be confused. Because when my dad came out here to Phoenix, he wanted to put on his old Arvo Ajala rig. And he went to do some fast drawing in the desert where we went out to shoot. And he had his 45s. And I saw him go whoop, and he puts a round into the ground next to his shoe. 255 grain slug I loaded. And I thought, you know, we're going to have to find a smaller caliber gun. And there was a Single Action. It was like a copy from South America or Italy. It had 3 letters, ECM, EFC or somebody. EMF. And we got him a couple of EMFs, and I ground the springs down. We didn't have spring kits to drop in them back then. I ground the hammer springs down to make them easier to work, and we put some nice grips on them, and we figured if he puts a 22 in his foot, we're going to be able to get him to the hospital. He puts a 255 grain slug in his foot. It could be a problem getting him there on time. This was before cell phones, before a lot of stuff. that's, I think, how I got on these 22s. That's where it all started, when my dad almost put a 255 grain slug in his foot. So I hope I haven't bored you. This is a romantic topic, Peacemakers. Thanks again for the people that loan me these firearms. Thanks for watching, and please send your questions or comments. Thanks.